Okay, and next up is Courtney Di Vittorio, and she will be speaking on tracking historical coastline wetland changes using Landsat to support lateral carbon flux estimates.
All right, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. Well, thanks for the opportunity to come and talk to you all today. I'm a professor in the engineering department at Wake Forest University. My background is in civil engineering, hydrology, and remote sensing. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the land side. But I'm working with a team of people that on a project funded through the NASA Ocean Biology and Biogeochemistry program. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're trying to estimate the lateral carbon flux from eroding marshes. And I'm going to have to toggle it. All right, there we go. Oops. Oh, okay. All right, so an introduction to my team. The photos you see here were taken by Dorothy Petit, who maybe some of you know, but she's a NASA scientist based in New York. And she spends a lot of time going out into the field and studying the marshes, and she collects soil cores and analyzes them in her lab. And she's noticed an alarming amount of marshes that have eroded over the years and brought our team together to start looking at the carbon flux that these eroding marshes might be sending into the ocean. Also on my team is Natasha Romanu. She's a modeler at NASA and works on coupled global ocean climate models that are really core scale. And Christian Bragnon, who looks at impacts of climate change. So our guiding questions is how much carbon is entering the ocean, and then how significant is this flux compared to other carbon fluxes that we're already accounting for in our models? And what's a good first step of integrating this flux into some of these coarser large-scale models? So we're looking at a really large scale. I've also worked with a lot of students at Wake Forest that I brought into this project at undergraduate, graduate, and postdoc levels. All right. So to start with the flux, first we need to look at how much has eroded and where, and we can use maps for that. So there are some existing wetland land inventories that some of you might be familiar with. There's the National Wetlands Inventory, which is a really detailed map that uses a hierarchical classification scheme and it's polygon based. However, it kind of shows a snapshot in time. And the data that's used to create this map comes from inconsistent dates. So it's not really great for change detection, but really detailed view. And then there's the NOAA continuous change detection and, oh, sorry, I'm mixing up my acronyms, the NOAA Coastal Change and Analysis Program, also known as CCAP product. This is derived from Landsat, so it's a 30-meter raster. It aligns pretty well with the National Land Cover data set, but it has wetland subclasses, and this is available for 5 dates from 1996 to 2016 in 5-year increments, so you can use this for change detection. And then pretty soon after we started our project, another new product came out called Decode, and this was produced over the Northeast coast. I think they might have extended it, but they used a more kind of holistic time series-based approach for looking at wetland changes over time, which is a similar approach that we are also planning to use. And so when this came out, first kind of stopped and decided to do a comparison between all these existing products to understand their similarities and differences really in the context of change detection, because we're really looking at marshes that are changing and eroding and going into the ocean. And so this is a key finding from that study, and there's a QR code for the paper, but for one of our representative sites that we studied in Blackwater, Maryland, we found a really big difference in the amount of change between these two products, basically an order of magnitude. And so this newer product was detecting about 10 times the amount of loss of vegetated wetlands into open water. So it just kind of shows, there are some existing products. There's still a lot of uncertainty and room for understanding these on a deeper level. So we developed a new algorithm. I'm not going to have time, obviously, to go into a lot of detail, but we have a paper on it. So we created a new coastal wetland land cover change product that covers the Atlantic and Gulf Coast. And we wanted some things that kind of distinguish it from other products. We wanted to make it consistent with the NOAA CCAP product, because some people are already using this for greenhouse gas inventory and carbon accounting so that they can make comparisons directly between them. So our primary classes align generally with those. We had to aggregate a little bit. In addition to having these full class homogeneous classes, we also have combinations that we call mixed classes. And the goal of this was, we don't want to just show change is subjective. When does something actually change? But we don't just want to show one type of change, but different types of change. It can be more gradual, it can be abrupt, to allow for more flexibility with users in terms of this time series analysis that they could do. So here's a quick snapshot of the final product. Along with this, we created a change type map. That's a categorical variable that shows severity of change and different types of changes. So looking at the full time series and analyzing it. So distinguishing between mixed change, gradual, full, abrupt, temporary, permanent. It's kind of like a change heat map. And so here's Barataria, which a lot of you have talked about. Another nice feature, this is the type of time series analysis you can do. So these maps are available on an annual scale. And from 1985 to 2022. And so here is a time series analysis for the Barataria Basin. The top map shows the annual change from year to year and aligning that with some of the main big hurricane events. So you can kind of see the response and change that we see in this data set after those hurricane events. And so the blue line is the full class change. So when it goes from vegetated to water, also these more kind of gradual transitional changes when wetlands might be becoming more fragmented are in the orange and the yellow. And then you can also look at cumulative change over a longer period of time, which is shown in that map on the bottom. And then a comparison of this with the existing NOAA CCAP product, just the Barataria Basin. The purple line is the CCAP, so you can see it's, it's coarser temporal scale. It's just once every 5 years compared to ours during this time period. But in general, and I need to do a deeper comparison, but the CCAP magnitude of change in the purple line here generally matches the magnitude of our full class change, but we're also capturing these more gradual changes. The orange is from vegetated to mixed vegetation water, and the yellow is mixed vegetation wetland water to water, right? So we're showing more change, kind of like the decode products, but users can kind of distinguish between different types of change by teasing these different types of transitions apart. But a caveat is I do think these mixed classes require a lot of user interpretation, right? Because change means different things to different people. We have a Google Earth Engine app. There's a QR code, and the maps are hosted on a public repository on Zenodo. So this tool is great because it allows you to zoom in and out and visualize things without having to go and download all the data. And so here's a change map side by side with just one of the land cover maps. So carbon, sort of my blind spot and kind of why I'm here to learn more about what this community is doing in terms of translating marsh volume into carbon fluxes. So this is work mainly by Dorothy Petit. One thing we're doing is synthesizing all of the core data that goes down to the depth of penetration. And so a plug for Dorothy, she really wants more marsh depth data. We've kind of scoured the Coastal Carbon Atlas and other sources and existing papers, but a lot of the cores that we have are really just the top first meter. And she's really emphasizes this because depth can play a big role in your actual carbon stock. So she's been synthesizing depth with, and then we're just using the static NWI for now to look at carbon stock. And then she's been looking at the variation by state. So this is some of her work. And you can see, New York has very small area, but if you consider the depth, in some cases, she's measured marshes that are like 9 meters deep near the Hudson River. And so that plays a big role, right, in your stocks. To get at carbon flux, there's a lot of assumptions in here, and that's really why I'm here and what I'm hoping to get out of this is have some conversations with you about some of these assumptions that we're making. But I have, 3 different types of eroding area that I'm combining and weighting. A big uncertainty is the depth of marsh that actually erodes. So I'm trying to kind of synthesize from the literature and have a more process-based approach in making that assumption. But I'd love to talk to any of you if you have insights on once a marsh becomes submerged, like how deep that erosion might go. Simply, area times depth to get volume. And right now we're using Holmquist's average for carbon content. Another big uncertainty is the fraction of eroded marsh that mineralizes and goes into the water instead of getting buried. For now, we're using the Sepcoda and White value of 0.75, which is from this basin. So yeah, we can get like a really simple calculation, right? Just marsh volume times carbon times a fraction to get some initial estimates. This is assuming the full depth. So far, our numbers seem relatively low, right, compared to some of the bigger carbon fluxes, but it's kind of like a first step. And my goal is to really kind of send this information, this data, these maps out there and to the community, be fully transparent about assumptions that we're making in this process, just to get an initial guess to start to look at how significant this might be. So still some ongoing work. We need to wrap up this project that I kind of summarized on the previous slide. But if anyone wants to use these maps, has questions about them, want me to like customize them for you in some way, please come talk to me.